Gentlemen, today we're continuing my ongoing series on hats with Fedora's little brother, the Trilby, here on Big Pretty Man. Hi, and welcome back to Big Pretty Man, the channel for the extra large man who wants to live his life large and in charge. I'm your host, Timothy Big Pretty Crowe. I'm a wardrobe and lifestyle consultant for the extra large man. Okay guys, today we're actually going to be talking about a hat that a lot of people get confused by, and that would be the Trilby. A lot of people have trouble telling the difference between a stingy brim fedora and the Trilby. Now, and this is a little bit understandable. They're very similar in many ways, and sometimes, mattering on the hat and the brand, it's kind of hard to tell the difference, even for a more expert eye. In fact, there is one particular hat store, I won't say names, but apparently they think that every soft brim hat that they have is a fedora, when about half of their stock looked to me to be a Trilby. I won't say their name, but I will say that I think they're a little batty. Anyway, it is a mistake that's easy to make, and I'm going to try to show you the differences, and there are differences between the two hats, between the fedora and the Trilby. Now, they have a lot of things in common. For instance, the Trilby, like the fedora, has the crease in the top. They have a very similar crown. They have the brim. They are a soft brim hat. Like I said, they have the crease in the top, and they have the pinches, the two indentations on each side. However, with the Trilby, unlike the fedora, the Trilby always has a short brim, and the pinch is much more subtle than it is with the fedora. Now, Lock & Company, the oldest hat store in the world, they're still operating in London. They're the ones that help invent the bowler, and they still carry it. They defined a Trilby as a short-brimmed soft hat that or stingy brimmed, that is flipped down in the front and turned up in the back, very much like this one. However, and that is a very good definition, but like everything else, there are exceptions to the rule. The Trilby, the brim can be turned all the way around, can be turned down. It can all the way be turned up, which makes it kind of look like a pork pie hat. I've seen that, but so sometimes that it's a little hard to spot. But it always, remember that the Trilby always has the stingy brim. If it's a wider brim, it is a fedora. Also, what I would note is one difference is that with the Trilby, the crown is usually more leaning, I guess a bit more of an angle towards the front dip in the front of the hat. So that makes it look a little bit longer, because it goes, if you go from the tip all the way up to the top, it gives it a little bit of this longer look, even though technically it's usually a shorter crown than the fedora. But like I said, even I have be looking at somebody's hat and be like, is that a short brimmed, stingy brimmed fedora, or is that a Trilby? It can be hard to tell. Some, especially with some companies, they look like a hybrid. But when you do see some Trilbys, you know it's a Trilby. I'll put that when some are just very clear a Trilby. Now on the history of the Trilby, it's a little bit interesting. It gets its name from the novel by the same name, Trilby, by George du Mornay, from 1894, and it got associated with the hat because of a stage play, very similar to the fedora. Fedora got its name associated with a play called Fedora, and and got associated with the name. Well, the Trilby is the same. It got its name associated with this book and the stage play coming from the book. However, the source of the hat may be a little more ancient than that. Its shape, especially the turned up in the back and bent at the front, flip at the front, seems to perhaps come out of the Trilby forms of hat. The Trilby hat goes back to medieval time. It's the Robin Hood hat, the sharp point and turned up at the back, like Robin Hood or Peter Pan. That hat with the feather, going up the side. But and that seems to have evolved into what's known as the Alpine, or Bavarian hat, even though it's more widely worn and was created in Australia, which has a shape almost identical to what the modern Trilby, with the turn down, the tall crown, and the flip up in the back. So even though I'm not really sure if this hat evolved out of it, I think it's very likely. In fact, even the fedora may have some association with that as well. But I think that the Trilby definitely comes out of the Trilby hat, because if I put a bunch of big feathers in this, it would basically be a Trilby. So yeah, that seems to be its origin. Now, this hat, of course, has it became very popular in the 1960s. A lot of people were wearing them. Become very popular. It was seen as kind of a rich fellow's hat, especially in English society, or it was seen as it's also called a slouch hat. It was also kind of become associated with golf players. A lot of golfers wear it. Now, the Trilby is a less formal hat, a little less formal than the fedora, and it can be worn with just about any type of outfit. In fact, I think it actually looks better in more of just a casual dress, or a dressy casual dress, than it does with a suit. However, you can wear it in more of a business casual, or even in a suit, even though I don't think it quite goes well with a full business suit. It is a little bit, I think, less formal than that. So that makes it, that does make it a very versatile hat, and which I think is one of the reasons that it's still around. It kind of lost favor after the 1970s, when all hats were kind of going out of style because of people's bigger hairdos and getting in and out of cars. It's hard to wear a hat. But it did have a revival in the 1980s. It's like a retro thing. And then later on, it got kind of the rap hip hop guys picked up a very cheap form of like canvas Trilby that they would wear a lot of times with the rims turned down, and usually kind of garish and I'd say kind of gaudy, with rhinestones and all of this, and some very bright colors. And it actually kind of reflected badly over time on the Trilby, even though it's the hipsters and some of the more modern movements have brought it back, as all hats have had a little bit of a renaissance in the last 10 years, and both the fedora and the Trilby have benefited from that renaissance. The hat is, as I said, it's kind of gotten kind of famous in a couple of fictional characters too. Probably the most famous would be Inspector Clouseau from the Pink Panther movies, as worn by Peter Sellers, the wonderful Peter Sellers. Of course, he wears a Trilby with the brims turned down. You also see that in the Inspector in the Pink Panther cartoons as well, which is what inspired it. And also for a lot of people in their 30s or 40s now, this was the hat of Inspector Gadget. Yeah, and though I don't think you can find one with the helicopter accessory, and if you can, let me know, because I definitely want one. Now, whenever I see the Trilby, I hate to say it, I have a little bit of a prejudice towards it. Both kind of negative. It's kind of bittersweet with me, kind of a negative and a positive, because I associate it as an old man's hat, because of my grandfather. My grandfather would either wear a short-brimmed fedora, or more commonly he wore the Trilby, as did most of the old men I knew of his generation. You gotta understand, I'm 51, and therefore when I was a kid, old men past 70, were born in the late 1890s to the early 1900s. So, you know, and they lived during a period when a man just did not leave the house without a hat on. That was just a thing. You went outside, you put a hat on your head. So, you know, and so all the old men I knew, you know, they always wore the classic uniform, usually the deerstalker brown pants, a white button-up shirt, and a trilby. It was just like uniform for the old men that I knew. And you know, of course, I had a great love for my grandfather, and so whenever I see them, I usually do think of him as well. But you know, I also think, you know, it also makes me think on the negative end of Ted Knight's character in Caddyshack, and he wore that horrible-looking trilby, and which was wonderfully lampooned by Roger in American Dad, wearing that check blue horrid trilby. And you know, and also this hat is very popular with golfers. You see that a lot, especially with a lot of garish colors. Back in the 90s, early 2000s, it started to get associated in the cheaper ones with more of the wrappers. You see it a lot, and actually, because those are cheap trilbies with with a lot of garishness to them, they actually kind of reflected badly on them over time. But they have made kind of a subtle comeback. Now, a few things about the trilby when it comes to the extra large man, or the extra large man in general, is that I'm actually not quite personally fond of a trilby. You know, in fact, I can't even show you another example other than this one, because I don't own another example. I own a lot of hats, but this is my only trilby. Used to have another one, but a friend of mine's dog found it very tasty. Yeah. But one of the reasons I'm not too fond of it, and also would not always recommend it for most big guys, is because it is such a smaller hat. With, you know, and if you have softer features like mine, I have more rounded features, and you know, pug nose and all this. And even when I lose weight in my face, I have a heart-shaped face. So that doesn't really look very good with the trilby. It just makes your face look moonish and wide. However, if you have more stern features, more prominent features, prominent cheekbones, prominent chin, more of a stern-looking face, then a trilby looks great on you. And yes, there are some heavy-set men that the weight hasn't went so much to their face, and even if it does, they still have very strong features that come through. Then you can probably get away with the trilby. But other than that, I don't really recommend it for bigger guys. You know, and quite frankly, I don't want to look like Ted Knight from Caddyshack. However, another thing about the trilby is that a lot of men wear it wrong. That's right. A lot of men I see, they want to wear the trilby like you wear a fedora, down low like that. That's not the way you wear a trilby. You know, it's too short a brim and it doesn't look right. You know, suddenly your face, you know, it looks like you've put a cap on your head. You know, like a bottle cap on your head. It doesn't work. No, the trilby should be set back from your brow like this, like that. You know, not down close, not turned down, but up, because you have the turned down brim and then it's turned up in the back. It gives it a very nice look, you know, that way. So, you know, and it actually does, because it turns it down a little bit, that helps to frame your face out a little bit and show off your forehead. It gives your face a little bit, makes your face look a little more narrow. And if you are a big guy and you're going to wear it, definitely tip it, because you tip it up. So if you tip it down, suddenly your face, see, my face looks much bigger than if I tip it up and do that. Now it looks more rectangular, you know. So if you're going to wear one, wear it like that. I still would recommend, if you like this type of hat style, soft brim hat style, to go for either a full fedora, or actually more of the fedora safari hat like I wore in my last video, with the wider brim, you know, and the brim turned down in the back and in the front and up on the sides, because that frames your face much better. But hey, if you really like the trilby, you know, go out there and get you one and tip it up, you know. Okay, well, that's about all I got to say on the trilby. You know, if it's the type of hat that you do like, of course, go out and get yourself one, but be sure, to get in front of the mirror, put it on, and really be honest about the shape of your face and whether the hat is flattering or not, whether it makes your face look too big. Push it up, see how it looks. And I still would always recommend the Fedora, as I said. But you know what? I'd love to hear your thoughts about the Trilby or any of the other hats I've talked about. So please do leave me a message down below, or you can reach me on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook. I'd love to hear from you. And be sure to, hit this little King Henry head with my pretty face and give me a join. I'd love to have you subscribe. Tip that hat back, try to look cool, and until I see you next time, stay pretty.